I'd like to call to order the Mount Olive Township Conference meeting of March 13th, 2018. Can you please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by a moment of reflection in honor of those that defend our freedoms. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Michelle, can you please read the Open Public Meeting Act announcement?
According to the Open Public Meetings Act, adequate notice of this meeting has been given to the Daily Record. Notice has been posted in the Municipal Building, 204 Flanders Drakestown Road, Bud Lake, New Jersey, and notices were sent to those requesting the same.
Roll call.
Mr. Amianda.
Here.
Mr. Ferrante.
Here.
Mrs. Labau.
Here.
Mr. Mania.
Here.
Mr. Stewart.
Here.
Mr. Roman.
Here.
Mr. Nacastro.
Okay, we have two items up for discussion. The first one is Police Department Rules and Regulations. Andrew?
Yep, thank you, Councilman. Later in the meeting, you'll be passing an ordinance to change the ordinance as it pertains to the police department. To coincide with that, the internal rules and regulations also need to be changed to allow for the special Class 3 officer. Since we're making that change, the chief took it upon himself to make some other administrative changes to the rules and regulations, which I have attached in your packet. They don't need to be codified, but I wanted to put it on the agenda for discussion if there were any questions. They were reviewed by our Labor Council, who have no issues with them, and the mayor is in agreement with the recommendation. So the chief is here to answer any questions.
Chief, if you could step up to the podium.
Sure.
When last you were here, you were talking about hiring special 3 officers.
Right.
Class 3 officers. Has there been a change since the last time you were here?
Well, there hasn't been a change in what I've wanted as far as in our rules, or our ordinance, the rules and regulations. The problem was it wasn't in there. So I didn't have the authority if you pass this tonight, I will then have the authority to move forward to hire Class 3 special officers.
Well, no, basically my question, I understand that we're not, the hiring that we're going to be doing in conjunction with the Board of Ed has changed since
Yes.
the last time, the update.
Yep.
Can you tell us what that
When-
changes?
When the BA Tatarenko and I met with the school board officials, it was our understanding initially, or actually it was myself and the mayor, and then BA Tatarenko and I had a follow-up meeting to clarify things. The first meeting we had with the school authorities, I was under the impression, so was the mayor, that they were going to hire 4 Class 3 special officers to go into the schools. That has since changed. They're going to hire 4 security guards for their schools. In particular, they want to put those in the elementary school. The mayor, though, was committed to our hiring 2 Class 3 specials. So the difference in that is that the Class 3 specials fall under the authority of the chief of police. The security guards fall under the authority of the superintendent.
Now, do you find that those changes are to your satisfaction, and will they be providing the best safety for the
Well,
students?
for me, it's less than optimal, but being a realist, I know that it also comes down to funding and money. So really what we're looking for is as I've said before, in active shooter situations, you have to manipulate time in your favor. You have to delay the shooter's entry into the building. You have to delay their ability to move about the building. You have to delay their ability to locate victims. The way you do that is you have somebody that's armed that can confront them. So the security guards that the school will be hiring will be armed, retired officers. The difference is that the pay scale may be less, which will be more manageable for their budget.
And will you be in liaison with them regarding the level of training? Would you be, will they have to sign off on you to find out what kind of training they're receiving?
We would not be responsible for any of the training for the security guards. That's
Will
the
they-
difference.
Will they at least inform you what kind of training they will be receiving?
Well, in order for a retired law enforcement officer to carry in this state, they have to qualify twice a year. So there is a minimum standard under a separate law under which they are able to carry a weapon. So they'll have to meet that requirement just to be able to carry a weapon. So that training will have to be met, and that's through the state. But in terms of the Class 3 specials, there's other training that they have to go through. For instance, according to the legislation, once we hire Class 3 specials, they have a certain period of time in which they have to go to school resource officer training. So we have to provide that training to the Class 3 specials. And then other trainings that would pertain to the police officer, for instance, CPR, defibrillator training, all that training would have to be done with the Class 3s as well.
All right. Does anybody else have any questions? No. Thank you, Chief. Much appreciated. Okay, the next item up for discussion is the Bud Lake Treatment Plan. Andrew?
Thank you, Councilman. I'll try to explain this in layman's terms, but I do have our environmental consultant, Larry, here to answer any of the technical questions.
Let the record reflect that Council President Joe Nicastro has shown up.
You can continue now.
Well, when you're ready.
You're fine, you can
Okay.
continue.
All right, thank you.
Has arrived. The birthday boy.
Just to give you some background and explain what we did last year, we hired a new environmental consultant to survey the lake every 2 weeks, and he provided spot treatment of to the algae. He was able to treat 65 acres of the lake, but due to the way the chemical disperses in the lake, 85 acres was actually covered. Now that he's assessed the lake for a year, we'd like to be a little bit more aggressive moving forward. One, due to the fact that those HABs were discovered late in the season, and also that we're opening up the lake to the residents. So the recommendation this year is to come in earlier in the season and treat the entire body. This way you attack the invasive species earlier on before they get to the surface, and you allow the good algae to grow in the lake. So that should alleviate some of the concerns that we had last year.
Do we have any reports as far as the progress from when we first started treating the lake? Is this something that's improving? Is it, are we staying par for the course, or is this a slightly losing battle?
No, we're definitely progressing, and I'll ask Larry to come to the podium and answer that specifically. He did provide an annual report to us, and we are making progress.
Mr. Kovar, if you wouldn't mind. Name and address for the record, please.
Larry Kovar. I'm president of Aquatic Analysts, P.O. Box 66 in Middleville, New Jersey, and I live up in Sanderson, New Jersey.
I was asking, what metric are we using in order to measure the progress that we're having in the lake? What are we using?
Okay, what we're doing is we're using physical ecological surveys. We're getting on the lake every 2 weeks. We're monitoring and surveying the whole ecosystem, the entire lake. Spending a couple hours on the lake with a boat, an airboat, surveying the whole lake for aquatic vegetation, looking for any type of sources of algal growth throughout the body of water. And what we're doing is documenting all that, along with taking physical measurements, taking oxygen from the surface of the water to the bottom of the water at each depth, along with temperature readings, so that we can see the health of the body of water.
And how long have you been doing these reports?
We started last year with the lake, and what we're looking at right now is from our surveys and from studying the historical data, there's always been a budget to work within to try managing small portions of the lake for aquatic vegetation. Unfortunately, when we're looking at this, you have three invasive species. Two are real major invasives. One is called curly leaf pondweed, which is a cold water plant, and Eurasian water milfoil, which is the second invasive plant. The third one is water chestnut. It's not very dominant in the lake, but it could take over the whole lake, so we're able to find those three species. In the past, the management plan was to manage around 65 acres of the lake for Eurasian water milfoil control, mostly in the center of the lake. And by doing that, what's happening is the milfoil has a chance to spread since it's an invasive species. With all the boat traffic and wind action in the lake, anytime this plant breaks apart where it breaks apart to fragments, a new plant could be established. So what happened is you're just basically not even keeping a status quo in the past. So this past year, we got a good baseline data, we got a good feel for what was going on ecologically in the lake. And a recommendation after last year was we did get very good control in the areas that we wanted to manage, but we're looking at it that it would be more advantageous to go after treating the entire lake with a systemic herbicide. This past year, we used a contact herbicide. The contact herbicide, when it comes into contact with the plant, it shatters the cuticle, which is the skin of the plant, enters the chloroplast, which is the part of the plant that allows the plant to carry on photosynthesis. It kills that, the plant dies very quickly. The disadvantage with that is you have to wait for the plants to be well established. So you're having plants growing in 6-8 feet of water. And when you kill that plant, it dies, decomposes, the nutrients get recycled back into the water, and it's a very large hit on the internal load. When I say internal load, nutrients getting recycled back into the water. And what we're concerned about is that internal load, when the nutrients get recycled back into the water, you have microscopic plant life that's in the water. You have some good algae, you have some harmful algae. And what we're really concerned about right now is the harmful algal blooms. They're called HABs. They're the cyanobacterias. You might have read them in the paper. Last year, Swartzville Lake was closed down. The year before, there's a couple reservoirs in central Jersey that were closed down. They have cyanotoxins, neurotoxins in the algae. Your lake was basically sampled in late October, November, and the state said you have to basically post the shoreline for HABs in the lake, which is the harmful algal blooms. There's different types of algae. That was microcystin. So what we were able to do was we were able to take a water sample. We were able to identify. We did a spreadsheet of all the different types of algae and all the type of microscopic animals that were in the water at that time. We identified them to cells per milliliter, which is about 15 drops of water, and we're able to look at the amount of cells per milliliter. You get over 20,000 cells per milliliter, which is basically at the threshold that the state's looking at as closing the water down. We also worked with your health department last year. There's an Abraxic test, which is a test where we're able to take a sample of water from the lake and analyze. We analyzed it in the office of the health department, and we're able to look at how many toxins were present in the water. And it wasn't super high, but it was high enough to have some concern. So our goal was, because of that, what we want to do is we want to get more aggressive to try managing invasive species, because what's happening is the lake's getting out of an ecological balance. And because it's out of ecological balance, there's a chance that these plants are fueling some of the algae growth later on in the season. So our goal would be to treat early in the season when the plants are a couple of feet in size, put a systemic herbicide in the water for the entire body of water, control the Eurasian water milfoil and the curly pondweed. Those are the two main invasive species that we're going after. To treat them, to control them, when they die off, the plants will hopefully be a couple feet in size and height versus 6 or 8 feet of height. And when the plants die back, the water should be below 70 degrees, 75 degrees. When water starts getting 75 degrees and above, that's a perfect habitat for your cyanobacteria. So we're trying to get the water, the plants die back, the nutrients get recycled back in the water when the waters are cooler. So good algae will absorb it. You also have some native species in the lake. And what we're trying to do right now is to basically get the invasives under control. So what's happening is these invasives are growing to the surface of the water faster and more aggressively than the native species. So the invasive species are outcompeting, shading off the native species. So if we can kill the invasives earlier, the native species will start to flourish, and hopefully they will compete. They will absorb some of the nutrients, they will compete with the algae in the lake and then get a good ecological balance, so we can really stay on top of the HABs.
Now, are you recommending harvesting?
We did recommend harvesting as an option. My big concern about harvesting is the harvesting will cut the biomass and remove the biomass out of the lake. That's fine for curly pondweed, which is one of the invasive species, but for Eurasian water milfoil, if you cut the plant and fragments were to escape the harvester, which they will, we spend a lot of time when we're harvesting to collect as much as we can, but any plants that do escape the harvester will reroot again. So there's a chance of spreading the milfoil throughout the body of water. So my goal would be to try doing a systemic herbicide to get the invasive Eurasian water milfoil under control. And in subsequent years, if we get really good control, hopefully in 2019, we can do some harvesting for the curly pondweed. But I don't want to spend the money for weed harvesting, cut the plants, they will regrow about a foot a week, and any fragments will come back. So from a budgetary standpoint, I feel that'd be more advantageous to go with the systemic herbicide for this year.
Now, the reports that you said that you've conducted, I'm assuming you sent those to the administration?
Yes, and we also met with the committee about a month ago. We discussed that.
Have those reports been disseminated to the whole council?
They were earlier in the year, or I should say even last year.
All right, so this year's report's not,
Well, yeah, we haven't done it this year. The reports
Okay.
that I gave were for when they started in April of 2007.
and that was the baseline year, right?
Yes.
Okay. And when would the subsequent report be out? It won't be till summer?
What we would be doing is, what we do is, when we do our surveys, our ecological surveys, within 3 days, we basically email copies to the town. So what I could do is, I can email them to Andrew and the committee, and they can forward them over to everybody else. So you can see them on a bi-weekly basis. At the end of the season, then we can send an electronic copy to everybody.
Great, thank you. Is anybody else? Ms. Labo?
Did you find, is it the chestnut from like what, like Musconecon had? Did that start growing in Bud Lake yet?
Yes, it has.
It has. So what's the plan to eliminate that, or?
Well, from our surveys, we're able to see it. We saw several plants, probably less than a dozen plants in the lake. One of the members of around the lake uses the water for water skiing, was asking us, you know, if we ever saw that. We did see it. We told him. He went out and pulled it out.
Oh,
So that was really good.
Oh,
So
okay.
that's a really good tool to use, because what's happening is you have a root system with a rosette with the seeds on it, and he was able to get it before the seeds get in.
oh, good, that's
So,
excellent.
but we have to be very aggressive, as aggressive as that plan is, to monitor it. So from our ecological surveys, when you see us on the lake, we're about 2 hours to 3 hours on the lake.
I saw you
surveying.
there last week, I think it was, or 2 weeks ago. Or was it you, or was it the state?
It might have been the state.
State, yeah, sorry.
But we're out there with our airboat, usually from April right to October, and we're doing ecological surveys. And we have very sophisticated electronics, so we can't see at the surface, we can see down below. And if we see something going on down below with the color of the plants, we can throw rakes underneath, pull the plants up to identify the plants.
Oh, I see. Yeah, because that problem with the what's it called? Just
Water chestnut.
chestnuts?
Yes,
Lake Musconecon had a terrible time with that. A
yes.
couple of years ago. I don't know if they got it under control or not, but when I heard about that, I was like, oh, no, we don't need that on top of.
Yeah, it's a very
other
aggressive
things.
plant.
Yeah.
It's basically came in through the ships and the ballast of the ships, and it's around the Hudson Valley area. And what's
Okay.
happening now is the waterfowl are
Yes.
spreading the plant from lake to lake. There's a seed on the plant that has 4 spines, like a multiflora rose spine in the corners of the seed. And in late July, August, depending on the water temperature, the seed will break off the rosette, the plant, and settle to the bottom. At that time, if a waterfowl swims through that, it may get stuck on the body of the animal and then swim to another body of water and spread. We found it on Swartzwood Lake for the state probably about 4 or 5 years ago. It was in an area where nobody lived. There was about a half acre of grass, and there was about maybe 50, 60 geese there, and there was all chestnut in the grass.
Oh, okay.
So what I'm looking at is, yeah, that's part of being an aggressive program for that.
Great, thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
Sounds to me like the biggest problems that we have with Bud Lake are the growth of the non-native plants and certain types of algae, which is what we're treating for. Are there other issues that are non-growth related with the lake that you've identified, or is that really what we're dealing with at this point?
Well, that's what you're really dealing with right now. We're trying to get more of an ecological understanding of the lake. It's hard to do it in just one season. That's why we came out. We're on the lake 12 times last season. We'll be out at least 12 times this coming season to look at it. So, and we're trying to get the different changes, ecological changes, from early spring to summer to fall. But what we're also concerned about is, what's really good is you have very good wind action on the lake. So the wind action has a good circulation in the lake, and you
Yeah,
have
we're
good.
very good with wind generally in Mount Olive.
Well, in a lake ecosystem, that's good because you're having a mixing going on. You have good aeration from air from the surface all the way down to the bottom. When I say air, it's dissolved oxygen, oxygen that's dissolved in the molecule of water. That's good for your fisheries. But my big concern also is with that wind action, that wave action, at times that we noticed this past summer, there was a lot of turbidity in the water. So we measured the transparency in the water with a disc called the Secchi disc. It's about an 8-inch diameter disc, and it's divided into black-white quadrants. And on a calibrated line, we submerge that down into the surface of the water, and we measure the distance that we can see that disc in the water. That's called the Secchi reading. That's indicative of the productivity in the water, the algae growth in the water. What could be affecting that is turbidity in the water. It could be from rain, pollen. But we also notice that when we're looking at the white disc in the water, there's a lot of brown particulate in the water. And what I'm concerned about is that it could be the wind action, that everything will settle to the bottom of the lake. And on a windy day, since it's shallow and you have good wind action, you're getting a vertical circulation in the water. And that might be mixing the bottom, bringing the sediment back up to the surface. And what I'm concerned about is that mixing that's bringing that stuff up to the surface could be feeding some of the algae growth. So we're going to be looking at that a little bit more in depth this year to see if that's the case. If it is, and we start seeing an onset of an algal bloom, I still have to get in touch with the state because one of the ways to manage the algae in the water is to treat it with a copper compound or go in with aluminum sulfate. But what I would recommend right now is to go in with a copper sulfate solution.
Does that cause other problems?
It doesn't. If you come in early enough, and by looking at this from a monitoring program, if we have a transparency and the transparency is 6 feet, that means I can see this disc down 6 feet. And then 2 weeks later, it goes down to 5 feet. And then 2 weeks later, it starts going down 4 feet. And I start seeing more cells in the water. I know there's algae starting to overpopulate the water. If we're to make a recommendation at that time to do an algae treatment, okay, before it explodes and we have a second reading of 2 feet or a foot below the surface of the water, there'll be a lot of cells in the water. So what our recommendation may be to treat at that time to knock the bad guys down, the bad algae down. The problem is when you do the copper sulfate application, the copper cannot distinguish between the good algae and the bad algae.
It's going to kill everything.
It'll kill everything. But what I'm looking at right now is with the HABs, the harmful algal blooms, we have to be very aggressive on this. And that's what I'm looking at right now. If we see a lot of turbidity in the water and there's a lot of material being resuspended back up, what we may have to recommend is going with aluminum sulfate application, which is called an alum application. I'm not recommending that right now, but maybe at the end of this year we might look at that as a management tool. The Romans were the first people to use aluminum sulfate.
You're welcome.
What you're able to do is you're able to take water out of a lake and use aluminum sulfate, which is alum. You apply it to the water, there's a chemical reaction that takes place, and it's like a magnet. The aluminum becomes like a magnet. It forms aluminum sulfate into aluminum hydroxide. And all this suspended material that's in the water bonds to the aluminum like a magnet. The aluminum settles out. The water becomes very clear, like water coming out of a tap.
How does that affect the wildlife on the lake? Fish?
It does not. What you have to do is you have to do some bench tests, because what will happen is the aluminum sulfate has a pH of 3.5, and if your pH in the lake is, it varies due to the algae, but we've monitored as about 6.5 to about 8.5.
8.5 seems high, 6.5.
Well, it's
seems
very
good.
alkaline, which is good,
Yeah,
okay? But if the pH, you put alum in and the pH is 8, you drop it down to 4, it's such a shock on your wildlife, the fish could die.
yeah.
So what you can do is you can use a buffered alum.
How is the health of the wildlife currently on the lake?
From our electronics that we're seeing, there's fish throughout the water column.
Yeah.
There's nice fish in the water column from our electronics. We didn't do any fisheries work, but I know the state's very aggressive on, managing the lake for stocking, for fisheries and stuff like that. But from our electronics, we're seeing fish all over the lake. And what's good about it is, it's not so much at the surface, that we're seeing down deep in the water, and that's a sign that there's good oxygen down deep. So if you're a fisherman, you're fishing the thermocline, you want to get down, fish like cool water, but they can't go down deep because a lot of lakes, they don't have very good oxygen. But your lake, you're having very good oxygen levels in there.
From a layman's term, the biggest problems that I saw with the lake this year were the
level of growth that was affecting the use of the lake by boaters, and obviously the algae, the harmful algae growth that we had at the end of the year. Both of which I guess are natural occurrences and have to be treated. It's not really something that we can change other than through treatment. Would you agree with that?
Yes, looking historically, I think I was about 7 years old. My dad used to come up here, take me up here to go fishing.
Yeah.
And the water was green back then. So it's not something that just happened right now. The good thing is it's a pretty protected watershed area, but what I am concerned about is the organic material at the bottom, the wind action. That's what we're going to learn about a little more this year, is because if the wind action is resuspending a lot of material back up, and it's been going on year after year after year, what we might want to look at is doing an alum application. And even though the water would get stirred up, it would strip out that material, make it unavailable to the algae.
Yeah.
The disadvantage about going with the alum is you have to really tweak this out, and it's very scientific to do this, because if you tweak it out and you have a second reading, let's say 6 feet, 4 feet, 5 feet, that's great. But all of a sudden, if you can see a disc this far down, 10, 12 feet, which you might like, the sunlight gets down, the plants can start to photosynthesize, and the plants are going to get more aggressive. So it's getting that ecological balance, you know,
Yeah.
between the transparent water. So it's very scientific. So what we're looking at this, we're trying to look at all these different angles right now to really see and parameters what we need to do to manage it properly.
Basically, what you're saying is when you fix one problem, you may cause other problems.
Yeah, and what we're trying to do is, we're not trying to get the lake like a swimming pool, we're just going to get it in a good ecological balance. You have a lot of pond weeds, native pond weeds, which are rural broadleaf plants that are growing, but they're basically being inhibited by the invasives. So hopefully if we can get the invasives under control, the native species will start to grow and flourish. They will compete with some of this nutrients in the water, but by having these plants at the bottom of the lake, they will basically act as a filter for the stirring up of the water. You know, and hopefully that would stop some of that agitation, keep some of the material down. That's what we're hoping that will happen.
What about the runoff from Route 46 and other stormwater control?
That's a very big issue. We talked about it at the last committee meeting,
Yeah.
and what I think we should do is we should get Trout Unlimited involved and make this a stewardship program through Green Acres to really get everyone involved, the watershed area, management area, get everybody involved and really start looking at watershed management. Because some of the storms you have, we looked at it, there was a couple issues. It was August, we got a call from the health department. If I could come down here, there's a couple concerns about the smell of petroleum products coming out of the lake. So we came down and I looked at some of the inflow streams, and I was amazed to see some of the sediment that was in the inflow streams.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. Whatever needs to be done in terms of the health of the lake.
But what's good about it is, if we can work together with the watershed management areas and maybe Trout Unlimited, you know, we might be able to get some grant money to do it. And that's the win-win situation. for
And we
doing
won't
it.
have to lay off any police officers to get the health of the lake. Sorry, Steve.
Mr. Coker, is there any possibility that dredging and making the lake deeper would benefit, even, you know, assuming it's allowed?
Dredging's always talked about management tool. Before you implement anything like that, you really have to look at what the natural bottom is of the lake. Okay, if the natural bottom is, there's a lot of organic material, which we see in the lake, there's a lot of organic material. There's a tool called hydroraking, where you're pulling organic material out, not the sediment, the sands and things like that. The sands and the sediment would come in from your inflow streams, but in the lake, there's a lot of organic material, decomposed leaf litter, that's maybe a feet deep. And that's producing an internal load of nutrients. It's also taking a lot of oxygen out of the water. In the state of New Jersey, since 1995, they allowed us to use a tool called hydroraking. It's like taking a clamshell rake or a York rake on a piece of equipment that floats in the water, reaching in the bottom of the lake, pulling out the organic material and getting that material out of the lake. That's considered, as of right now, it's still considered an unregulated activity with New Jersey DEP, which means there's no permit needed to do that.
But you would cause other problems by doing that, as you said. I mean, if the organic material is not used as the filter for the recirculation of what's going on in the lake, you may have other problems.
Well, we're talking now the muck, the
Yeah.
organic muck that the plants are rooted into.
Right.
But we're also, the plants is
So
what
the
I'm.
plants stay? and
Yeah, the
mud
plants would
goes?
stay, yeah,
So then the filter is still there?
yeah. So we look at it, and that might be something to look at. I don't recommend that right now. To implement a tool like that, we have to get more data to see what's going on. And our goal is to get the biggest bang for the buck. You know, let's stay within a budget, let's get the lake in a good ecological balance. If we can't get the lake in a good ecological balance because something's going on, then we resort to the next aggressive
So
tool that
we
we have.
don't know what the natural bottom is of the lake?
I do not. No, you mean for the actual depth?
Yeah.
No, I do not.
Okay. Ms. Labo?
For the bog over there, any of the treatment, does that have any effect on the, negative effect on the bog?
No.
No?
Not
Okay,
at
so
all.
that's all good.
Yes.
And then a silly question, I've heard since the day I moved up here, that there was a little plane that had crashed in the lake. Did you see any planes in there?
Yeah, no, we haven't.
Everybody, we
I
always
lost
hear
my
this.
wallet there.
So,
Find it.
so now we know that that's not true.
Yeah. But getting back to the natural area, you're really lucky to have that.
The bog?
Yeah.
I know, it's amazing, isn't it?
To have that as part of your watershed as a natural filter, that's really, you're very fortunate to have that.
And it's like very, very rare, of course, in New Jersey, and that might even help out with some grant money if we can get everybody to partner with us to try and protect that as well.
Yes.
And one last question, with the storm water runoff, down at the beach area, I know for a couple of years now, it's the sand had been washed away and brought right around the corner and down the Raritan River. Is there any way to stop that stream from going through there, or?
We talked about it at the committee meeting. I was happy someone brought that up. What we're advocating is for 2019, the end
Okay.
of the swim season, to get in there with like a tractor with a rake on it, rake out some of the sand away from the water's edge, and have the silt fence, you know, a silt fence that's maybe about 3 feet high with stakes on it, set it along the shoreline area, bury part of it, take bales of hay, and take rebar and bang the bales of hay down with the rebar. So any type of stormwater you have or runoff coming in, the sand will get caught where the bales of hay are and the silt fence is.
Okay.
And then in the springtime, you
can
pull the
just-
fence up, you clean it off, you pull the bales of hay out, and you rake that back out again.
Right back in?
So
Okay,
you're
good.
saving it from going into the lake.
Okay,
That's what we
very
talked
good.
about at the
It's also
meeting.
acting as a filter for anything
Yeah.
which comes from running off of the road. for the
Yes.
sand.
Yes.
Yeah, very good, thank you.
Anybody else? Thank you very much, Ms.
You're
Cole.
welcome.
Thank you.
One thing I want to point out, the funds that are going to be used are from open space, the open space fund.
And how's that fund balance? We're okay in there?
400.
Yeah, we're a little over 400,000 right now, Alex.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, that was very educational.
It
Yeah,
was
thank
very,
you.
very interesting. Very good. Also, I have a question for Sherry also or for Andrew. Has the Open Space Committee been noticed on the cost of this? Because they should be included in on what's
The
going
environmental
on.
committee was, I
Oh.
could pass the information along to open space.
Yeah, because it's Open Space Fund,
There'll be a
so.
resolution at the next.
We should
meeting
still,
authorizing-
like, keep them updated. That's one of the things in going to the meetings, they get really concerned that these different things are being planned and the funds are being used, yet they don't have any kind of input, they don't have any knowledge of what's going on, so just if we can keep them in the loop as well. Thank you.
Okay, up next, we have 13 resolutions. Take a note that resolutions 14 and 15 have been tabled. Does anyone have any questions on any of the resolutions? Okay, seeing none. For first reading, we have one ordinance. Does anyone have any questions? Okay. For second reading, we have two ordinances. Anybody? Okay. Anybody have any old business?
Which
Oh.
ordinance is the
For-
new one?
For
Oh,
second
they're
reading, we
both-
have
They're
two.
both second reading, okay. I did have a question for Chief. Just wanted to ask, when you were here a couple weeks ago and you talked about changing the, like, for the chief requirements and stuff, is that also Is that still
No.
on the
No.
table? No.
That hasn't been changed. The only thing that's been amended is the preferred courses, because some of the courses that were preferred before no longer exist. And so there's been some changes with that.
So those were changed, but the other thing you were,
That was not changed.
is that going to come back again, or is that
Not right now.
not right now? Okay. All right, you'll let us know.
All right.
Thank you.
Anybody else have any questions on any of the two ordinances for second reading? Okay, seeing that, anybody, old business? None. Any new business? Seeing none, anybody from the public wish to be heard? Okay. I'm gonna backtrack a little, new business, Andrew.
Yes.
R22 is currently the refrigerant that's in our buildings. R22 was pretty much production stopped in 2010, and by 2020 it's going to be banned and pretty much illegal to possess. What are we currently putting in place, replacing the R22 units with the 410A?
I did have a brief conversation with John Geiger, who did bring this topic up, and if I recall, he did mention that a couple of the older units might be upgraded, but I could get a full report from him on what his recommendation is.
Yeah, because my concern is the price has been steadily escalating. I think the last I recall, it was, like $175 a pound. And I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, I think we're going to be having some roof. Are we doing anything with the roofs coming up in subsequent years or anything?
Not to my knowledge, no.
So, okay. All right, but because I think that's something that we should definitely start planning, because before we're forced to replace our units, and they might be more expensive doing it then.
The roof has been in the capital budget for probably 3 or 4 years, Alex, which is probably where you're recalling
that's- okay,
seeing
that's
it,
where it's
but we
coming from.
haven't funded it. Yeah.
Okay.
Hasn't been funded.
All right, because I think that might be, it'll make the project exceedingly more expensive, but it might be beneficial that if we were to engage in the roof repair, that at the same time we replace those units. Okay.
We'll look into that.
All right, thank you. Can I entertain a motion to adjourn to the public meeting?
So moved.
Second?
All in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? All right, I shall continue. I now call to order the Mount Olive Township Public Meeting of March 13, 2018. Michelle, can you please read the Open Public Meetings Act announcement?
According to the Open Public Meetings Act, adequate notice of this meeting has been given to the Daily Record. Notice has been posted in the Municipal Building, 204 Flanders Drakestown Road, Bud Lake, New Jersey, and notices were sent to those requesting the same.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Amianda.
Here.
Mr. Ferrante.
Here.
Mrs. Labow.
Here.
Mr. Mania.
Here.
Mr. Stewart.
Here.
Mr. Roman.
Here.
Mr. Nacastro.
Here.
All right, Mr. Amianda, could you please approve the minutes of previous meeting of January 27th, 2018 budget hearing?
Yes, Mr. President, I make a motion for approval of minutes of previous meetings on January 27, 2018, budget hearing.
Okay. Roll call?
You need a second?
Oh,
Second?
Roll call?
Mr. Amianda.
Yes.
Mr. Ferrante.
Yes.
Mrs. Labow.
Yes.
Mr. Mania.
Abstain.
Mr. Stewart.
Yes.
Mr. Roman.
Yes.
Mr. Nacastro.
Yes.
Mr. Ferrante, could you please pass resolution number 1, waiver of reading of the budget in full?
Sure, I make a motion to pass resolution number 1, waiver of reading of the budget in full.
Second?
It's been moved and seconded. Roll call?
Anybody from the public?
Does anyone for the public wish to be heard?
Let's just, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Okay. Any council comments? Okay. Roll call?
Mr. Amianda.
Yes.
Mr. Ferrante.
Yes.
Mrs. Labow.
Yes.
Mr. Mania.
Yes.
Mr. Stewart.
Yes.
Mr. Roman.
Yes.
Mr. Nacastro.
Yes.
Okay, we're on to a resolution for,
Now, we're going to have the public hearing on the 2018 municipal budget and sanitation district budget. It has to be on the record.
okay.
So we're going to open it up to the public.
Okay, I'd like to open up to the public, resolution on the the 2018 municipal budget and sanitation. Does anyone from the public wish to be heard? Seeing none. Anyone from council? Okay, none. Roll call, please.
We're just having a public hearing, do we need to take a roll call?
Do the roll
Sharon?
anyway, Michelle.
I'm sorry?
But don't,
Take the roll call.
Take a roll
to
call
be sure,
anyway?
yeah.
Okay.
but don't you have to introduce it first?
It's just that we're just
To
having a
remove it?
public hearing, it's not.
Okay, so you don't have to move it.
Well, we're going to do, the resolution to adopt is going to be later, and it's going to be tabled to the next meeting.
Okay.
We're just having the public hearing right now.
Okay.
Because we advertised for it. Okay, we're going to do roll call. Mr. Amianda?
Yes.
Mr. Ferrante?
Yes.
Mrs. Leibau?
Yes.
Mr. Mania?
Yes.
Mr. Stewart?
Yes.
Mr. Roman?
Yes.
Mr. Nacastro?
Yes.
Okay, we have 18 pieces of correspondence.
Nope, we're on to resolution number 2 to amend the 2018 budget.
No, that's being tabled. Yeah.
No.
No. This is the amendment, Alex.
It's a
for
little
the-
confusing. We're on
The
number
officers.
2. Number 3 and
Number
4
three.
will be tabled, but we still want to put on the record, we're going to do each of them individually and put them on the record.
Okay.
Okay, Mr. Mania, can you please pass resolution number 3?
I move to pass resolution number
No.
Number 3
Two
through
or
2.
Which one?
2.
Two.
This is,
Two.
let me
The
just clarify.
resolution
Go
to
ahead.
amend to add
Sherry?
money back into the
Thank
budget
you,
for the
Rob.
Class 3 officers.
Okay.
Yes, this is the amendment from what we introduced.
Okay.
Okay.
it's as clear as mud.
And number
Ms.
3,
Leibau.
number 2.
So first, I
Miss-
have to move.
Okay, who's making the motion on number 2?
Me.
Ms.
Oh,
Labor.
yeah.
Okay, you're going to make a motion,
I make
then there's going to be a
motion-
second.
Go
I
ahead.
make a
I'll
motion,
second.
make a motion to approve resolution number 2.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Roll call.
Anybody?
Anybody from the public? There's a reason why you let them.
Better you than me, that's for sure.
Does anyone from the public wish to be heard? Seeing none.
Council?
Anyone from council? Okay, none. Roll call.
I'm sorry. Mr. Amianda?
Yes.
Mr. Ferrante?
Yes.
Mrs. Leibau?
Yes.
Mr. Mania?
Yes.
Mr. Stewart?
Yes.
Mr. Roman?
Yes.
Mr. Nacastro?
Yes.
This is lengthy because normally we just adopt the budget and we
Yes.
don't amend it. So there's a lot more going on here. That's why it's,
Confusing.
yeah, exactly, Jeff.
Right.
Yeah.
And plus, it's in English.
Okay, we're doing number 3. We're going to do number 3, but we're not,
That's me.
it's going to be tabled. We're going to make a motion to table.
I make a motion to table resolution number 3.
Second.
Moved and seconded.
Okay.
All in favor? Yes, I'm sure. We don't have to vote on that, I'm assuming, right?
Yeah, I'm just going to take a roll call.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Amianda?
Yes.
Mr. Ferrante?
Yes.
Mrs. Leibau?
Yes.
Mr. Mania?
Yes.
Mr. Stewart?
Yes.
Mr. Roman?
Yes.
Mr. Nacastro?
Yes.
Mr. Stewart, would you be so kind as to table resolution number 4?
Make a motion to table.
Thank you. I would like to make a motion to table resolution number 4 for
Second.
sanitary budget.
Been moved and seconded. Roll call, please.
Public?
Does anyone from the public want this tabled?
That's why you sit here.
Anybody from the public have anything?
Does
I
anyone
wonder,
from,
I wonder Joe didn't want to do this.
That's why I was out of it tonight.
does anyone from the public have any questions or comments on resolution number 4? Seeing none. Anyone from council?
No.
Seeing none. Roll call, please.
Mr. Amianda?
Yes.
Mr. Ferrante?
Yes.
Mrs. Leibau?
Yes.
Mr. Mania?
Yes.
Mr. Stewart?
Yes.
Mr. Roman?
Yes.
Mr. Nacastro?
Yes.
All
Hey,
right.
now we're on to correspondence.
Hopefully we didn't mess it up and nobody's getting paid.
Yeah.
Okay, we're on to 18 pieces of correspondence. Does anyone have any questions on correspondence? Seeing none. We're on to the public hearing for ordinances. I open to the public. I open the hearing to the public on ordinance number 8-2018 entitled Township of Mount Olive, Morris County, New Jersey, calendar year 2018 ordinance to exceed the municipal budget cost of living allowance and to establish a cap bank. Mr. Nacastro.
Yes, I move for adoption and final passage of ordinance number 8-2018.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any council discussion?
As John's back.
Does anyone from the public wish to be heard? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Mr. Amianda?
Yes.
Mr. Ferrante?
Yes.
Mrs. Leibau?
Yes.
Mr. Mania?
Yes.
Mr. Stewart?
Yes.
Mr. Roman?
Yes.
Mr. Nacastro?
Yes.
Okay. I open the hearing to the public on the ordinance number 8-2018 is passed on second reading, and I hereby direct the clerk to forward a copy of the same to the mayor and publish the notice of adoption as required by law. I now open the hearing to the public on ordinance number 9-2018 entitled, an ordinance of the Township of Mount Olive, County of Morris, State of New Jersey, amending and supplementing various provisions of Chapter 68, Police Department of the Township Code. Does anyone from the public wish to be heard? Seeing none, Mr. Ferrante, please.
I move for adoption and final passage ordinance number 9-2018.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved in second. Any council discussion? Seeing none, roll call.
Do we do public?
Yes, we did public.
Okay. Mr. Amianda?
Yes.
Mr. Ferrante?
Yes.
Mrs. Leibau?
Yes.
Mr. Mania?
Yes.
Mr. Stewart?
Yes.
Mr. Roman?
Yes.
Mr. Nacastro?
Yes.
Ordinance number 9-2018 is passed on second reading, and I hereby direct the clerk to forward a copy of the same to the mayor and publish the notice of adoption as required by law. Okay, we're on to ordinances for first reading with a second reading of March 27th, 2018. Ordinance number 10-2018 entitled, "In Bond Ordinance Amending in its Entirety Bond Ordinance number 8-2017 of the Township of Mount Olive in the County of Morris, New Jersey, providing for various capital improvements, finally adopted February 28, 2017, to include additional projects, to decrease the appropriation and authorization amounts, to increase the down payment, and to delete references to the State of New Jersey Department of Transportation grant from the Local Aid Infrastructure Fund." Ms. Leibau?
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. I move that ordinance number 10-2018 be introduced by title and passed on first reading, and that a meeting be held on March 27, 2018, at 7 p.m. at the Municipal Building, 204 Flanders Drakestown Road, Bud Lake, New Jersey, for a public hearing, consideration of second reading, and passage of said ordinance, and that the clerk be directed to publish, post, and make available said ordinance in accordance with the requirements of the law.
Second.
Any council discussion? Anyone from the public? Okay, seeing none, roll call, please.
Mr. Amianda?
Yes.
Mr. Ferrante?
Yes.
Mrs. Leibau?
Yes.
Mr. Mania?
Yes.
Mr. Stewart?
Yes.
Mr. Roman?
Yes.
Mr. Nacastro?
Yes.
Okay. All right, we're on to consent resolutions. They will be 5 through 13. 14 and 15 are being tabled, correct?
No, we already,
No, those are
we already
We already
tabled the
tabled,
two.
so
We're gonna do
they're all
5.
5 through
Make a
13.
motion for 5 through 15.
Does anyone wish to remove any resolutions to non-consent? Seeing none. Mr. Mena, can you please move resolutions 5 through
15.
15?
I move resolutions 5 through 15.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Roll call.
Anybody from?
Anyone
the-
from the public wish to be heard? None? Any council discussions? Roll call, please.
Mr. Amianda?
Yes.
Mr. Ferrante?
Yes.
Mrs. Leibau?
Yes.
Mr. Mania?
Yes.
Mr. Stewart?
Yes.
Mr. Roman?
Yes.
Mr. Nacastro?
Yes.
Okay, we're on to the bill list. Mr. Stewart.
I would like to move for adoption and passage the bill list.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Roll call.
Any public?
Does anyone from the public want to,
Anything on the bill list?
nothing on the bill list?
Council comments?
Any council comments?
Roll call.
Roll call.
Mr. Amianda?
Yes.
Mr. Ferrante?
Yes.
Mrs. Leibau?
Yes.
Mr. Mania?
Yes.
Mr. Stewart?
Yes.
Mr. Roman?
Yes.
Mr. Nacastro?
Abstain on check number 81992, and yes to all the rest.
Okay, we're on to administrative reports.
I'll
Andrew.
start. First of all, I'd like to wish Council President Joe Nacastro a happy 33rd birthday for the 25th time. I have a bunch of things. First, I don't know if you've seen my Facebook page, but we actually added a new Facebook page, which is a virtual job fair. We've had an incredible response to it, So if anyone can help get the word out that we're looking for all those employers who are looking to hire, that we can get it up and be able to get the residents of Mount Olive who are looking jobs. We think that it'll be an incredible benefit to the
I also
township.
reposted it to the chamber site for you.
Thank you, appreciate that. Very happy to announce that Jill Dagan received the Association Service Award at the NJRPA Conference, March 6, 2018. And I can tell you from anecdotal experience, Jill seems to win an award every year. We're very proud of her efforts. I think that many towns around us are very envious of our recreation program. She does a great job.
Agreed.
Saturday, March 24th, in the Senior Center from 11 to 3 will be the Tech and Brick event showcasing our robotics team. If you don't know, the robotics team had an event, district event this last weekend at the high school, and although they didn't fare very well in the competition in terms of their overall effort, they were successful in achieving the Chairman's Award, which is the highest award that the first robotics competition presents. It is an overall service award for community involvement and many other factors that go into the presentation of that award. It is an extremely great achievement for the Mount Olive robotics team, and it will automatically qualify them for certain upcoming events that they otherwise might not have qualified for. So I'm very proud of their efforts. On a less happy note, I note that the food pantry is in need of donations. So any help in spreading the word, either through Facebook or through other social media or through the chamber, any help in terms of additional donations for the food bank would be greatly appreciated. This year we're going to be participating in the Kindness Tour that CMS is sponsoring. I don't know if you saw it on my Facebook page, but it's pretty exciting. So we're going to be involved the entire week of April 16 through 20 and keep posted in terms of what we're going to do and how we're going to be involved as a township. And I think that's all that I have. Glad to see that Councilman Mania has returned healthy and
Thank you.
happy.
Well rested.
Well rested.
Thank you.
Welcome back.
That explains this, the winter storm we got.
Oh, the last thing that I need to bring up is the stigma-free, which have been, there's some window, I don't want to say stickers, but clings that are going to be hopefully throughout the township and most of the commercial establishments, and demonstrating that Mount Olive Township is proud to be stigma-free in terms of the way that we operate. That's all that I have.
Andrew?
I just want to add that 2 weeks ago, I sent out the information manual to the Old Flanders neighborhood in regards to the sewer project. I've started to receive some feedback, so once I have more feedback, I will share that with the entire council.
Thank you.
I have a question for
Yes,
Andrew.
Ms. Leyva?
Andrew, what kind of feedback are you getting? Because I've gotten a few calls. Are they-
Negative in regards to the financial impact that the residents will endure.
Yeah, I also, they were confused. They're like, why are we getting this? I thought this was all settled kind of a deal, so
Yeah.
it was just additional, you tell them it's just additional information?
Mhm.
Oh, boy.
Anything else?
Thank you.
That's all.
That's it. Okay, any old business? New business? Legal matters?
Yes, thank you. Just wanted to note that the township's affordable housing compliance hearing is Friday, so I'll be in court with Chuck McGordy and hopefully obtain an order for substantive certification, and then you'll be done and protected until 2025. You all may have heard about an important court decision that was issued this week out of Mercer County with Princeton and West Windsor, who actually litigated their cases. And many of the courts in the state have been waiting for Judge Jacobson to come out with her opinion, which is very complex, deals with the methodology to be used to calculate affordable housing. And as we expected, it's sort of somewhere in between what the towns are advocating and what Fair Share is advocating. But the nice thing about it is we're compliant. we don't have to worry about it. We don't have to be embroiled in the appeal that will likely happen. So you can rest assured that you're in a great position, and everything will be completed on Friday. So that's it.
All right, thank you. And once again,
Thank
I
you.
applaud
Yep.
your office for all the diligent work regarding that.
Thank you very much.
Okay, council reports. Mr. Amianda, Board of Education.
Mr. President, I have a partial Board of Education report due to a snowstorm power blackout from March 1, 2018 to March 9, 2018 in some parts of this town. Mount Olive High School district held its annual robotic team competition at the high school grounds for 2 days, Saturday and Sunday, as you have been told. There were 40 school districts from New Jersey, Delaware, and Pennsylvania competing for awards to team members. The competition was well attended, and Mount Olive Township and the school district received good comments from the visitors. They have never seen such an outstanding school compound like Mount Olive, and some of them, some of the people I talked to had good, positive comments, and they asked me, and of course I told them that I was on a school board at one time, and they would ask me, how did you do it? Because we in Sussex County, we can't get anything done like this. And I told her that it takes the cooperation of all the members, all of the board members, and also like we as ASEA, it takes the cooperation of all the town councils to accomplish good results. I told them that when we were voting to invest money in schools and in robotic teams, we had to work together, and that's what is needed. And if we work together, we will leave behind outstanding results. I think I said that the last one, there were 40 school districts from New Jersey, Delaware, and Pennsylvania competing for awards to team members. Now on senior citizens, Mount Olive Seniors Club met on Tuesday, February 6, 2018 at 11:30 a.m. Sergeant Carl Mass from Mount Olive Police Department was the main speaker, and the topic of his speech was 6 winter safety tips for seniors to prevent commonly winter dangers that the elderly population face. These steps that he advised the seniors to follow was to avoid sleeping on ice, press for warmth, fight winter time depression, check the car, prepare for power outages, and prevent carbon monoxide poisoning. The seniors were really appreciative of the speech from the sergeant, and they thanked the police department and the township council for all the services that they are getting from us. Now, Mount Olive Police Department served the seniors with lunch provided by Mount Olive Municipal Alliance Committee, and that's the end of the report.
Thank you, Mr. Amianda. Mr. Ferrante, Environmental and Lake.
Environmental was canceled last week due to weather, so we're looking to reschedule for later in the month. Nothing else for this.
And anything on library? Okay, thank you. Mr. Stewart?
Thank you. Alex, I have a EDC meeting will be this week, and so I'll report on it in the next meeting. And then the Community Action Panel started planning for the fall event, and as things come, we'll bring it to the council.
Ms. Labelle, Open Space Board of Health and Stigma.
Yes. Board of Health meets next week. And as I passed out to all of you, except for Mr. Nicastro and the mayor, because you guys weren't here and I passed them out, the Health Department is trying to do a community voice initiative. It's a survey that they're asking residents in Mount Olive to fill out, and it's being, well, the Mount Olive residents are going to be entered into a drawing for an iPad if you fill it out. And through the organization with the New Jersey healthmatters.org, they are giving, let's see, a chance to win $100 or a signed Jets football for filling out the survey. So that's really nice.
You don't want people to fill that out? Is that what you're saying?
No, we a Jets football.
Why?
I don't,
Oh.
I guess they got one.
Just a curiosity question.
I filled out the mayor's already where it says gender identity. I put unknown.
I know. And, yeah, that was a very interesting question. I'm taken aback by that one. I had to think about it for a second. Anyway, so if we could, if you know of anybody from Mount Olive that you would fill this out, they're trying to get as many surveys as possible, so that's why we're passing them out tonight. And
There's an online link too, isn't there?
there is, I believe, absolutely, yeah, right there. Did you see it? Is it the www.njhealthmatters.org?
Yeah, it should be that cover page.
And, yeah, and that should lead you to there. And also, they're going to be asking the mayor to put it on his Facebook page, the information.
Happy to do so.
Oh, thank you very much. And for the Open Space Committee, I was not able to attend last night, but as I understand, one of the Boy Scouts in town is going to do his Eagle Scout project, making kiosks for some of the trailheads. So we're still working on that, which is really, awesome. He was, coming and doing a presentation, so we'll get more information for that as soon as I receive that. And also for the Stigma Committee, thank you, Mayor. He's asked me to be the ambassador of Stigma Committee, and Lisa Brett helped me. We started a Facebook page. So if you want to go onto the Facebook page, if you see something positive or a story you want to share, we'd love to have you participate. And I was going to have like an opening on the 24th of March at Presence of Mind, but I just found today there's something, a conflict has arisen, so we're going to move it to a Friday night, which we hope will be a little bit better for everybody. April 20th, I just have to confirm with Presence of Mind. And the reason why we're choosing Presence of Mind to have our, kind of our initiative, Presence of Mind is a wonderful gift shop. I don't know how many of you've been there, and it's over at the Mall at 206. And they hire all special needs employees, which is just really phenomenal. So they all kind of like go hand in hand. So they're thrilled that we're going to be coming there and having our kickoff there, and we'll move forward from there. I also was in touch with the county freeholder, Kathy DiFilippo. She's the one who spearheaded this, and I think almost every county now, every town in the county, we have 39 towns, I believe almost everyone, except for maybe one or two, are now stigma-free, registered, proud to be stigma-free, so. Okay, that's it.
Thank you. Mr. Mania?
Nothing on legislative. Last week's planning board meeting was canceled. We have one coming up on the 15th, this Thursday.
And for myself, Recreation meets next week. And on Pride, we're finalizing and choosing the banners for the spring and summer and nailing down future projects. Does anyone from the public wish to be heard? Seeing none. Any closing council comments? Ms. Labor, you
I
had
was gonna say,
something?
could I just back up and have a question first? I want to
Back up
ask
all
the
the way.
mayor and Andrew. I had heard that Toys R Us is thinking that they're changing their whole thing. They're going out, basically. How is that going? Obviously, they're not going to need a distribution center anymore. In Flanders, have you heard anything? Any thoughts going on yet?
Nothing in addition to what you've heard. Obviously, they're having tremendous financial problems. They filed for Chapter 7 bankruptcy. They were hoping that someone was going to come in and either provide an influx of money or actually buy the company. That hasn't happened. I think the likelihood of their being dissolved through bankruptcy is great, which will create an issue in terms of obviously the distribution center, which is in town. I don't think that it's going to affect us in the short term because they're still going to own the property. I think in the long term, it's a very viable property. And I've already reached out to Andrew in terms of a number of different thoughts that I had in terms of trying to attract perhaps somebody who might be interested in the property. But I think that probably will get worked out through the bankruptcy process, that as Toys R Us moves through their dissolution, somebody will come in and will take that space. But the real estate is still there, it's still owned, it's still being taxed, similar to the way that Sam's Club, when they went out, that hasn't affected us in the slightest in terms of our tax revenue. It
And-
obviously affected a number of residents who lost
Right.
employment, and we stepped in and tried to fill those voids.
Same thing with Babies R Us?
Same thing right now with Babies R Us, a little bit different because the real estate is probably owned by a third party. Sam's Club, the building itself is
Was
owned
there-
by Sam's Club. I can tell you that I've had some interest in terms of filling that space, but Sam's Club has an existing 4-year lease on the property, land lease with the current owner of the land. So I don't really see any tax consequence in terms of loss over the next 4 years related to Sam's Club. I would imagine that we're probably in a similar or better situation with respect to the Toys R Us distribution center, which is, I think, first-class operation in terms of the upgrades that they did. Very viable location, which somebody ultimately will come in and take over. So we'll see a change in ownership, but not really any financial consequence as a result of what's happening to them financially.
Okay, thank you.
It's good to hear. Mr. Amianda, any council comments?
No, I just asked all the council members to unite and work together to move forward. That's the only way that we are going to put this town on the map. Because the things that we accomplished over there on the school board, because we work together. If the superintendent came up with a good recommendation, we supported it. And if the mayor comes up with a good project, we should support it and move forward without looking backward. Because they ask how we accomplished to have a school like this here. And it's because we work together. We always, when we had a good project, a good recommendation, we united. And we should do the same.
Ms. Ferrante?
Nothing.
Ms. Labow?
Just want to say happy birthday to President Castro.
Appreciate it.
Do you feel older?
I was old yesterday, so I feel old today.
Happy birthday.
Thank you.
Many, 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 many
Thank
more.
you.
Thank you.
Mr. Mania, welcome back.
I too wish
Oh,
to
yes, welcome back,
wish
Mr. Mania.
Mr. Nicastro happy birthday.
Thank you.
Mr. Stewart?
Just a shout out to the, all the responders, Tim's group, the DPW, great job with the back-to-back snowstorms. And it's really evident when you go to a couple of the other towns in the area. Cheers.
Thank you. And I too want to wish Mr. Nicastro a happy birthday. And just to remind you to always give 100%, except when you're donating blood or getting a divorce.
I remember, I saw that on your Facebook.
And with that being said,
Can I
yes.
just jump in on something that Greg said in terms of the responder, which is always something that's bothered me, because obviously, when the storm response, when there are issues with the storm response, it comes back to me, and it comes back to me on my Facebook page. Let me just say that the guys do a phenomenal job in every single storm that comes. But you have to recognize, and Tim will agree with me, that each storm is different. depends upon when it comes in, the consistency of the snow, the weather temperatures, the amount of traffic that's on the road, how the wind blows, the trees that pull down. So that even our response here, which our town fared much better than other towns around us, is different based upon the factors that each town saw. So places like Chester and Mendham, which had much greater tree loss, obviously had greater impact in terms of their daily response and the effect that it had on their community for the days which followed. We were very fortunate in these storms. It was, I would imagine, in a lot of ways, an easier storm to deal with. These were easier storms for us to deal with than some other storms where we get 2 inches of ice and not 1.5 feet of snow. So what you have to recognize, and while I appreciate Greg's comments, the response that we get in each and every storm is the same. It's the same. They go out and they do the best job that they can under the circumstances which are presented. Every storm is different. I try and explain this to people. There are some storms where it's impossible to get down to blacktop. If the storm comes in and then it gets down to 20 degrees, the snow is not going to melt, and you're going to be dealing with a lot of people who are unhappy about the response which Mount Olive gives. You have to understand that we have 25 guys doing 30 miles of roadway. We have limited resources in terms of our sand, our grit, our salt. We use them as best we can to get through the season so that we're able to do other things. But there are times when we're not going to be at blacktop, and there are other times, like the storms that we've just had, where we're very fortunate that we really only had one major road closure, which was Drakestown Road, during this storm. Other towns, as I said, through Chester was a disaster. Mendham was a disaster. Montville, well, Montville's, when you look at Montville, they got almost twice as much snow as we got.
Yeah.
And I was talking to Tim about that. They got 10 more inches than we got. 10 more inches is another large snowstorm, and there's no place to put the snow. It was.
Heavy wet.
It was. We were very fortunate in these storms in terms of how it hit Mount Olive. We got a lot of snow, but it was the kind of snow you could push off the road, and the weather was afterwards was appropriate in terms of what happened to our roadway. So I agree with you that they did a great job. I think that the message that all of us need to send is they do a great job in every storm, but the storm itself is really the predicting factor in terms of how we all have to deal with the roadways afterwards.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I'd like to just jump on top of that and also thank the electricians and JCP&L, I mean, and especially the out-of-states linemen that came up. I mean, when we're all sitting inside, hopefully with the electricity on, enjoying ourselves in comfort, these gentlemen and some ladies are up in some harsh weather, are getting the power back on. Ms. Lego?
Thank you, Mr. President. I just wanted to also say that not only is our staff, our DPW staff, absolutely fantastic with every single storm, but they're also very responsive when there is an issue. I had one resident contact me, one of the plow trucks got stuck actually in her yard because the ground was very soft and our equipment's very heavy, especially with all the salt on there. And Tim and his department, they were right on it and got that, and they assured her, don't worry, when spring comes, we'll get your yard repaired, and that was phenomenal. But I also want to add on to what Mr. Roman said. Now, one of my son's friends is a lineman. He said, it's really terrible, you're out there trying to fix the power, and you got people literally throwing stuff at you, screaming at you, calling you names, and it's it's not their fault. They're doing the best they can. So after hearing that, I was actually in Montville, and it was really bad. There's wires and trees down everywhere. I had to stop at a stop sign. The truck was there. I rolled down the window and thanked the guys. And he goes, what? And he goes, oh my God, did you say thank you? He goes, wow, thanks, lady. I mean, it was really nice to see the smile on his face. So a little bit of kindness
Goes a long way.
goes a long way, doesn't cost you anything, and it's so rewarding to see their
nice to be
smile.
nice.
Oh, it is. It's wonderful. So that's, sorry.
So true. Could I get a motion to adjourn, please?
So moved.
Second.
moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Meeting adjourned.
And let's hope we don't get 8 inches next Tuesday, as they're saying.
Another one?
Yes.
Are you?
Next Tuesday.
One more out.
I
Get another one next week.
I like being
Right,
surprised.
Tim? They're calling Tuesday, right?
Tuesday,
As
they're
of now,
talking.
but who knows?
Are they really?
Too early. Too early. They can't figure out where we were today.
I'd rather remember.